happened, and it just came back to me this evening as I was on my walk from which I just came. If anyone ever excavates these videos, they'll wonder why I always look drenched whenever I spoke about these things. It's because thank God for walks. Like imagine we couldn't walk, or I don't know. Imagine we were amorphous, spineless jellies all our lives, incapable of consciousness or walking. Yo, thank God for small things. Not small things, like it's a huge deal. Anyways, so I was thinking of this as well this evening, and I thought to share before I forget. And it's a random experience that happened last week, and it got me reflecting on lots of things. But it basically involved intervention when something doesn't seem right in public, especially. So just and I'll try to be brief because when I listen back to some of the others, I'm like, get to the point, stop rambling. Anyway, so I was sat somewhere. There's a place I sit for about 15 minutes every day during my when I whilst out and about, and I was I was sitting and noticed there was a group of people, three people, and what appeared to be a couple with someone else, maybe their daughter. And suddenly, the man in the middle he seems weak, incapable of walking, like his legs, his feet were giving way, and the two people tried to support him, and something's clearly amiss, and I noticed immediately. So I'm sat at this bench just watching them, and they try to support him for a while. So this it lasts about 30 seconds in all, but they try and support him, and he just kind of keeps going lower and lower. And the strange thing was just the contrast between this experience and the people around them. So I was about 5 meters away, sitting on this bench, and there's a pub of sorts, and there's people coming in and out, and they clearly saw them, but no one was bothered. And it gave me a false sense of security. So that contrast made for conditions that didn't have me intervene immediately. I don't mean that as an excuse, but upon reflection, I think that's what happened. Now I'm obviously beating myself about this, beating myself up, beating beating myself up about this, beating up myself about this, whichever of those, because I wish I intervened earlier. And anyways, but the story is, I watched them, and then after what felt like 20 seconds, might have been more or less because time just seemed to expand. I approached them and say to them, perhaps he could take a moment to sit down. And the lady says, "Yeah, but only I wish we had a chair or something." That was interesting because this was something of a park where we were, so there were lots of places to sit. And in the event of animal, so this was my thought process first of all, before even walking over and determining if I should intervene. I was thinking, this person's legs are giving way. It's common knowledge that you get closer to the ground in such situations. So I did think perhaps they don't have a chair, but I thought if it is really an emergency, then he could sit on the floor, on the ground. So I was thinking if they're not doing that, then perhaps they know what's going on. Maybe it's not something they would want for a stranger to intervene in. They've got this. That was my thinking. But when I speak to the lady and she says, "Oh, only if we had a chair," I'm thinking, wait, can't they see all these chairs? So I go, "Oh, there's a chair close by." And this lady, some random lady, just fortuitously appears out of nowhere with a chair and says, "Oh yeah, here." And she gives it to me, and then I position it, and this gentleman sits, and they're really grateful. He goes, "Oh, thank you very much, sir," that sort of thing. And I was just reflecting on this experience. Well, I asked, "Did you need water or anything?" He said, "No, we're fine." And I asked, well, I didn't mean to be intrusive, but I was genuinely concerned. At least I believe. And so I asked if they needed water, and they said no. And I must have said something like, is it just fatigue?" And she said, "Yeah, it's," and she seemed like she was about to disclose, but preferred not to, and said, "Just medication." I said, "Oh yeah, fine." And from that as well, I was also a bit confused about if they were just trying to be polite and not take more of my time, or if they felt I was being intrusive or just preferred not to share. Because I could very easily have kept pushing if they felt they were being intrusive, because I was happy to help. or if they did tell me what the issue was, I do have basic first aid training. I might have known what to do. So I was also a bit confused on that point, but it did appear they preferred not to mention what the issue was. So after that, I walked off and was leaving. Then at some point, maybe, I don't know, 2 minutes after I left, I come back to just, to peek and see what was going on. And they had left. But I did think of this experience long and hard, because I was thinking of just how, we hear things about this effect, spotlight effect, what's the bystander effect. I think both those things actually happened in that moment, because this my understanding is the spotlight effect is when someone is suddenly, it's almost like when one expects to be part of an audience, but they're thrust into the spotlight without preparation. So I feel like these people, the lady and the daughter, that this family, the people that were trying to support this man, they were incredibly nervous, because this episode is happening in public, and I think the nervousness or the social anxiety overrode their cognitive ability. And, oh, I don't mean that in a pejorative sense. I just mean things that one would normally see, like the fact there was a chair or that they should sit on the floor, they didn't think of in that moment, because there was maybe perhaps they were having this adrenaline rush or something. So that's one thing I was thinking, just how that in such situations I shouldn't assume the other person is being as rational as I am, looking from the outside. That was one consideration. The other was this jarring idea that people just there's a painting I've seen. I'm not, I don't know much about art. I actually don't remember the name either, but it struck me and it stayed with me. By the way, if you know what this painting is called, please tell me. Ooh, if anyone watches this, my brother watches these, bruh. Oh dear. Some of my videos have one like, and I used to wonder who's liking my videos, who liked that video, let's be specific. And I noticed, oh, if you're watching this, bro, it's fine. I mean this in a nice sense, but on one instance, I obviously there were no likes on my video, and he, my brother, we spoke, and he said, oh, your French is improving. This was a video in which I was speaking French. He says, your French is improving. And right after that conversation, I noticed there was one like. I'm like, oh, so it's been you. Oh dear. Well, thanks for the support. I'm not after the likes though. I'm very comfortable. If anything, well, okay, you know what? Phew, chill. I like the likes. Okay, so so I was reflecting on. So this painting I was talking about was one of a man that seemed to be drowning in the foreground, and the contrast between that life-threatening event and everyone else that was just at ease. Some people were having fun, enjoying themselves, and it was so jarring. It was crazy. Something that stayed with me, because this man is literally clutching at the straws, and I think some people were having fun, some people were playing, someone is drinking, some people are holding hands. So it was, I think it's quite reflective of what occurs in many situations where, especially in public, and that I think would be the bystander effect, where something is happening that an individual, a situation occurs where an individual person or an individual would normally intervene, but they won't, because it's happening in public and they assume someone else will. And so everyone thinks that, and so no one intervenes. I feel to some extent that's what was happening here. But I hate to say this, but I also felt there was a degree of sheer apathy, because there's a guy, like I could still see the picture in my mind, that just came out of this pub and looked at this situation and just kept walking. Now, I could obviously give him the benefit of the doubt and say he's just not perceptive, but this was very clear what was happening. At the very least, it was out of the ordinary as to catch anyone's attention. But so nonchalant. Oh, nonchalant. It's so funny how many of those words have been appropriated now. Nonchalant now sounds like it's almost like I'm saying something of a colloquialism, which it isn't. But I'll be considerate and courtesy and demure. Cringeworthy. Okay, so I remember that that gentleman that just walked out and just didn't seem to care. which he isn't obliged to, but I found that concerning. So all my reflections were on me. And obviously, I feel, well, no, one looking from the outside may say I did intervene and help, which I did, but it took me 30 seconds. Now, one may think, oh, that's a very short span of time, but I watched everything unfold. And I remember an episode when I was, I don't like, it's difficult for me to tell how old I was, but I must have been about no older than 10, let's say. And I was sat in a car with my sister and mother. So my mother and sister were in the front seats, and then I was in the back. And suddenly, my sister and I don't know if I was laughing as well, but yeah, I think both of us were laughing. I'm not throwing you under the bus, dear. So both of us were laughing, and it's because a kid had fainted outside, so on the road. So we're at school, and a kid fainted. My mom was reading something in a newspaper, and she hears us laugh, and she looks out to see a distraught mom trying to assist this child. And she instinctively opens the door and goes out, lifts the kid by the head, and says, "Let's go." It was so instinctive. She didn't skip a beat. And that episode stays with me as well. But I also think it to be, it's laudable, but I think, I don't know, I've always thought it to be my responsibility to jump in and assist. Now, with this situation, what makes it particularly, um, I think concerning would be a strong word, but the reason I reflected on it a while was I was trying to understand if there was anything objectively wrong. In other words, I was thinking of if what went wrong, to the extent that I felt something went wrong, was more to do with my more a fault with my moral responsibility, or merely an attempt at optimizing my response time. In other words, oh my God, in other words, is something fundamentally wrong with my moral compass? Or am I just trying to improve and grow based on what was objectively perhaps an appropriate response, but out of a desire to be better, am I just trying to improve? So I'm thinking it must be the latter, because I did see somewhere that for one to be responsible for a thing, there must be causation and fault. So in this case, I didn't cause the thing. I wasn't at fault. But so I rule out the idea that it's some, I don't know, some I'm immoral in a fundamental sense, as to not respond when morality dictates I do, or that my conscience is dead to other people's plight where it oughtn't. So I don't think that's the case. So I think of the second situation, which is to do with an attempt to improve my response time, to be more responsive, to be more attentive, to be a better person for my own sake. In other words, trying to beat my own record, or trying to improve my own. I just try to optimize myself in things like that, as many other people do. So I was thinking of that, and if the extent of my wrong, because I did feel there was wrong, I could have done better. And I'll call that wrong, not in a normative sense. Yeah, and that's where I am. I think I think it consists, that sense, in the idea that I should be able to do better. I don't care about everyone else. I don't care that no one else intervened, or for my own sake. I'm my own person, and look, I'm not trying to be holier than thou, or to say of myself that I have, or I should expect to abide by a different standard for some special reason. It's more, that's not where I want to be in that particular situation. That response wasn't satisfying to me. I want to know why. Why was I not happy with myself? Sitting and, oh my God, sitting and watching that man try to make at least 6 steps where I could very easily have sprung into action and acted. Was I trying to take in more information? Was I trying to assess the situation? Did I spend too much time thinking of all the possible explanations that this poor lady must have had, which she apparently didn't? See that? I need to switch that up. What could I have done differently? I could have sprung into action earlier. I should have erred on the side of... What were the 2 things to err? Or what were the 2 possibilities? I think it's... I don't know, was I trying to protect my ego in potentially interrupting a private moment? I don't think that was it. Appearing too... I don't know. No, I think it was just... To be honest, it may actually be the bystander effect. I just couldn't believe that this could unfold in a situation like this. The public nature of what was transpiring almost rid it of its efficacy.